Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome to Vedic Heritage, episode 2 of Karma. Would you believe if I told you that for most of our life, we rarely exercise our free will to make decisions? Surprisingly, that is the truth. We who believe in individual rights, free speech, and more rarely exercise true freedom, the freedom to make decisions based only on facts. The doctrine of karma helps us understand this fact that most of the time we live life on autopilot mode, and only if we learn to take back control and assume stewardship can we have a say in how our future unfolds. The topic of karma deals with human behavior and its repercussions. In episode 1, we saw the nature of karma, the doctrine of cause and effect. Every act will bear a commensurate fruit. We also saw that the obvious and immediate fruits of action are called drishtaphala, and the fruits which appear in the future are called adrishtaphala. We saw two types of adrishtaphala, those born of punya, the good-intentioned acts, and those born of papa, the ill-intentioned acts. In this second episode, we will see the third type of adrishtaphala called samskara. What is samskara? Samskara is the invisible byproduct or result of every action. This fruit is not a result of intention like punya or papa. This fruit, the samskara, is a result of our individual nature, our personality. Since each of us has different life experiences, our habits, likes, and dislikes are specific to us. They define our individual nature, which in turn dictates how we behave. Even how we sleep, or bathe, or eat may be different from others. Since our personality influences every act, it too gains a fruit, the subtle fruit of impression called samskara. Our personality is not clearly seen even by ourselves. Thus, we call it adrishta, an unseen or unknown cause, and the fruit born of this unseen cause is samskara, which is also too subtle to be known by us. Samskaras are a result of every action every day. How can that be? We sleep, bathe, eat, travel. We do so many actions which seem so mundane. How can these everyday routines be important enough to influence our life? Let's say you start the day with a coffee. Will that influence your life? You may say it's only coffee. How can it influence my life? But when you don't get said coffee, will that influence your day? Oh, I cannot function without my morning coffee, many would say. So we see that each action, however small, matters because it may influence other actions that we perform. Okay, coffee may influence my day, but how can it influence my future, you may ask? In order to understand the impact of both small and big actions, we need to understand the nature of samskaras. When we interact with the world around us, we experience it as sensory inputs like smells, sounds, forms. Each sensory stimulus is received by the senses and perceived by the mind, and then we react to it. Similarly, conversations, thoughts, and activities we perform too are managed by the mind. Thus, all experiences, however small, are registered in the mind. These form our memories. While memories are bundles of information, the subtle impression they leave in our mind is called a samskara. Let me use an example to explain this subtle impression. We may not remember the equations we solved in school, but the computing capability remains with us. Similarly, most memories are associated with emotions. Thus, even when a memory is hidden or lost, the essence of it as an emotion or a learning is preserved within us in some subtle manner. This fine, subtle impression of experience is samskara. Now, what is the role of samskaras? These samskaras registered within us prompt our behavior. That is, if an experience has caused pleasure in the past, we would welcome a similar one in the future. And when an experience was unpleasant in the past, we will choose to avoid a similar one which comes by. While we may have made these decisions consciously the first few times, soon the decision becomes an automatic response, and we need not think or reason to make it. It seems to be the obvious and right thing to do based on previous experiences, a mental autopilot mode. By repetition of these behaviors, we collect similar sanskaras. Do I like my morning coffee? Do I enjoy reading? What scares me? What annoys me? All these unique preferences we cultivate are our samskaras. Over a period, samskaras coalesce together to become a habit. These habits, distinct tendencies, strong likes or dislikes we have acquired are called vasanas or personality traits. Now it is no more just our experience, it has now become our individual nature. In Yoga Sutras, sage Patanjali defines vasanas as a dynamic chain of samskaras, a constant stream of habitual experiences. If you reflect on the average day, most of our day falls under this category of habitual practices. Since samskaras, the individual impressions we collect, are too subtle to be known, their effect is only felt when they have matured into a vasana. Therefore, by the time the result manifests, the smaller actions that contributed to it are not known. For example, psychologists tell us that if I react defensively when I am given advice, it may be because I was criticized regularly as a child. While I may not remember all those instances, my reaction to them was probably to defend myself. The samskaras of many similar experiences may have been a defensive attitude. This defensive attitude now becomes my default reaction to any similar circumstance even today. Since the original actions which led to the formation of samskaras is unknown to us, samskara is an adrishtaphala, the subtle fruit of unseen action. Since each of us has different life experiences, our vasanas, the desires, likes and dislikes, are specific to us. Even twins who are so alike in many ways will have different vasanas resulting in distinct personalities. To sum up this process, every action generates an experience, and the experience in turn leaves behind an impression in the mind called samskara. Over a period, we collect similar samskaras, slowly defining what we desire or dislike, which eventually evolves to become a personality trait called a vasana. Now, let us explore how our personality dictates the results we reap. Our vasanas determine how we act or react to life situations. A failure may destroy one person, but it may be viewed as a learning by another. Thus, the personality we develop dictates our experience and defines our approach to life circumstances. We are all bound by habits, likes and dislikes. So we repeat patterns, whether they are good or bad for us. We are aware of some habits and desires, like eating junk food or traveling or painting, but we are unaware of many habits. Like we saw earlier, when we get defensive, apprehensive or aggressive, we react negatively to situations. And then there are those circumstances when we are cheerful, enthusiastic and empowered. Nothing phases us and life seems to flow more easily. In both instances, it is the hidden samskaras which drive us, making us react by habit rather than respond by choice. Our vasanas and samskaras make our decisions and dictate our actions. Having understood this, now question yourself, how many times a day do we act consciously instead of being driven by habit? If you think about it truthfully, not many. Thus, it is clear that it is not us per se, but our personality which influences our actions. My personality is my identity, so why is it bad to follow my nature, you may ask. When it concerns our positive qualities, it is good to follow our nature. But when we have negative traits, they make us do wrong acts or take wrong decisions, many of which may be detrimental to our well-being or success in life. Thus, traditionally, 2 steps are recommended. Step 1 is to become aware of our vasanas. When we know which desires and dislikes drive us, we can become more aware of how we behave. It is not beneficial to always follow our desires and tendencies, so we need to consciously consider the circumstances at any instance before taking a decision. Since vasanas operate through emotions, we can override their influence using rational thought. For example, the pandemic has us confused on many fronts. We may react with panic, fear, or total disdain, depending on our samskaras. But we can consider the available information, take the required precautions, and continue conducting our normal life. That is a rational approach, not dictated by our emotions. Hindu scriptures constantly talk about the need to empower the intellect to better control our vasanas. Rational thought can help us gain the right perspective in a situation, and we can break the cycle of a pattern which is detrimental to us. This is step 1. But we cannot use rational thought to override our habits during every act of every day. That is a tall order for anyone. And habits in nature will automatically take over, since most of our actions will be influenced by our personality. The easiest way to have a say in our life would be to refashion our personality towards one of our choice. Step 2, therefore, is to change our samskaras. But how can we transform our personality? We saw earlier that personality is built by repetitive actions over a period of time. So this is a slow process. Therefore, it is important to concentrate on the effort rather than the result. It is much easier to incorporate small changes regularly. Just as it took years to cultivate our present habits, undoing them and rebuilding new ones too may take a while. By slowly substituting old detrimental habits with new beneficial ones, we can fashion our personality into one which influences us to choose positive actions. When we choose positive actions, we reap positive results, both as drishtaphala, the immediate and obvious result, as well as adrishtaphala, the future results like punya and good samskaras. Thus, because our personality directs our actions, by refashioning our personality, we can consciously determine how we will act in the future. Our acts will reap the commensurate fruits, and thus we get to decide the direction of our future. Therefore, by exercising our free will, we can determine the path our lives take. And due to this capability unique to humans, we are the only ones subject to the law of karma. And restructuring our personality is the way we can exercise true free will. I hope you've understood the concept of samskaras and vasanas and the role that they play in our life. There are more interesting topics relating to samskaras like reincarnation and heredity. I will cover those in the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. If so, do recommend to your friends and family. Thank you for joining me. Hari Om.